So yeah, this is my first Yin class, and I've recently achieved my 50-hour Yin CPD. So when people hear the word yoga, people often think of like acrobatic shapes and the splits and all that kind of stuff. And there are many, many different types of physical yoga, and Yin is one of them. And Yin yoga is akin to positions like static back and frog, and we're going to do frog today, and modified floor block. It's akin to the kind of long hold poses where we're allowing our joints to settle into place and we're allowing our fascia to release and let go. So this is very, very gentle. But as ever, if you're watching this, you've got to look after yourself. So even though we're doing these long hold, gentle poses, we're just going to be laying around and chilling and relaxing. Some of them still might not suit you. So do make sure that you do anything that your body wants you to do and you never ever force through pain. So I'm going to do a little bit of, I'm going to try not to talk too much because I don't want to ruin the relaxation. But as we get into the poses, our theme today for the class is self-compassion. I've been doing a lot of kind of like inner work myself recently, and I've realized actually how horrible I am to myself, but also how important self-compassion is when it comes to our movement, our posture, and our yoga. So we won't stand up today and do a standing assessment. We're just going to come to the floor. If you have a yoga bolster, that's going to be super, super helpful. If you don't, you can have like a couple of pillows or something like that. But if you don't have a yoga bolster, no big deal, because we can, I'm going to give you an alternative for that exercise anyway where you need it. And if you can have 2 yoga blocks as well, that would be fantastic. So we're going to start off just laying on our back in a kind of constructive rest pose. And have your knees bent, have your feet flat on the floor. And I want you to have one hand on your belly and one hand at the bottom of your rib cage. So I put my right hand on my belly, my left hand at the bottom of my ribs. You can put cushions here under your head if you want to, or if this kind of lower body position doesn't suit you, feel free to do something that does. And what we're going to do here is just breathe in a slightly more active way than I normally teach. So you all know that I'm just obsessed with breathwork at the moment, but I haven't got the qualification yet, and I'm just getting more and more interested in it. And I'm not qualified to teach breathwork as such, but I do a lot of it. So we're just doing a little bit more, putting a bit more thought into how we're breathing today. So what we're going to do is fill our belly with air first on a kind of half an inhale into our nose. And then what we're going to do next is the rest of your inhale. I want you to lift the bottom of your rib cage underneath your left hand. So you're breathing in into your belly. And then I want you to move your rib cage in the kind of second half of the breath. And then I want you to exhale through your nose. And then once again, so you're creating this like 2-tier breath, basically. First half of the breath, you feel your belly rise underneath your right hand. Second half of the breath, you're feeling your left hand raise underneath your rib cage. And as you go through that movement at this kind of pace, two, suck, in, breath, that type of rhythm, suck, in, breath. What I want you to notice is if your shoulders are moving up and down, or if you're moving the top of your chest up and down. And I want you just to become a little bit more aware of that and really try and do whatever it takes for you to push your breath down further into your body. So when we're moving our belly underneath our hand, that's being created, yes, through the belly muscles, but through stimulation of the diaphragm as well. And when we're moving our rib cage, that's also stimulation of the diaphragm, but it's also stimulation of the intercostal muscles. So they're the muscles that run in between our ribs. And I think what this breath can do so nicely is probably highlight to us how we don't often breathe in this region. So for so many people, they're basically in their neck, they're in their throat, they're at the very top of their ribs, their chest and their shoulders. And this is why we have one of the reasons why we have so much tension up there. And just by drawing this breath down, nice and slowly, but deeply, you'll hopefully start feeling, oh, my rib cage is relaxing. Maybe your lower back is relaxing a bit more. Maybe you feel your pelvis is changing shape. So I went to a transformational breathwork class last night, which is this pattern of breath, but it's the hyperventilation. It's quite an extreme breath to do, so I'm not doing it today. But it follows this movement pattern through the body. And as I was doing it, it was just like my hands were tingling, my face was tingling, warmth all through my legs, my mid-back was releasing, the shoulder was repositioning. And it just made me realize I do my posture exercises every single day. I move well, but actually at the heart of the problems that I have with my movement patterns is how badly I'm breathing. It's becoming more and more obvious to me. I get stressed. I push all of my emotions and my trauma and everything that's ever happened to me in my life. I suck that all in and just gasp it all in. And over the decades, I've pushed it down and down and down. And to me, what it feels like is it's all congregated into that right rib cage for whatever reason. And that's what's keeping me stuck. I'm not processing my breath, because by processing my breath, we bring up emotions that we don't want to feel. We bring up things that we've been hiding from ourselves for decades and decades and decades. So very recently, I've started doing some therapy for the first time, and it's making me to see things with such different eyes. It's been so amazing to do. But one of the things that's really happened is I feel like my body is really starting to free itself up in a physical sense, because whatever it was that was kind of stuck in my body is coming out. And then on top of that, the breath work just seems to accelerate that process. So I just feel so passionately about it. And I'm hoping that you can get like a little bit of a mini impact of that today, even though we're not quite doing the same extreme breath. So we'll stop here soon, but we'll just go a little bit longer. So breathing into the belly, trying not to let the ribs move too much on that first bit. Second bit, the bottom of the ribs move, but the shoulders are not moving and the neck is not moving. We're just keeping that breath in the kind of middle of the body and in the lower body, seeing if we can get things moving slightly differently. Okay, we're going to move on to our supported bridge, which means that you'll need your bolster. But if you don't have a bolster, you can absolutely do this with yoga blocks. So I think probably people watching the recording, lots of you will have done supported, not supported bridge, supported fish. So supported fish is when we lay our bolster along our spine like this. We could have our legs in frog, although we are going to come to frog a bit later on. So maybe you'd prefer for now just to have your legs out long. You can take more cushions underneath your head. So if it feels like a little bit too much of a back bend to be in this kind of full bolstered position, then you can absolutely put a couple of cushions kind of on top, and that will decrease the angle of back bend that you're asking your body to do. And what you can do if you don't have a bolster is just run 2 yoga blocks, one on top of the other like that. So you can put a blanket on top if you need, but I actually find that the kind of rectangle position of the blocks feel quite nice. They kind of push me into shape. I quite like it. So we're just laying back here and we're going to go again. So what we do in Yin is we hold things for a long time. And in a typical Yin session, we do something called a rebound after each pose, which is when we'll do something like this and then come to Shavasana afterwards. But because the class is only an hour, I'm not doing that rebound pose. We are going to finish in Shavasana, corpse pose, which is just laying still on your back. But yeah, I just thought, in kind of to keep things a little bit more interesting, we'll just move through these gentle postures, one after the other. I don't really feel like any of them will be so extreme that you'll feel like you need to have a strong reset. But you'll notice in other Yin classes that are normally a bit longer, that's what happens. So with this supported fish, you've got your kind of coccyx on the floor, your tailbone on the floor. And if it's comfortable to do so, I just want you to feel like you're rolling your pelvis slightly forwards. So rather than having your pelvis kind of tucking up and under onto the floor, I want you to feel like you're rolling forwards from your pelvis. So you're going to create a little bit more pelvic extension, which is going to help you elongate your spine a little bit more. But if that's uncomfortable, don't worry about it. With your hands, you can have them palms facing up at the side, or maybe you could take them overhead. Maybe you could have them out to the side in like a T shape. I quite like that when it really stretches off the fronts of my arms. Or you can have your hands behind your head, whatever suits you. So I'm not going to be talking to you for once too much about alignment today, because yin is, I mean, all yoga is really about trusting your intuition and listening to what your body is telling you. But yin, I think especially, is that way inclined. So I'm not going to be instructing you on what you should be doing with your foot and your hips and your shoulders and things. I'm just inviting you to play around with what feels good. So, you know, having the arms out to the side like this, having them overhead is just stretching off the fronts of the chests, tension through the abdominals, opening up the shoulders. But maybe that doesn't suit you. Maybe you just want to have your hands exactly where they were before, and that's fine. I want you to see if you can keep going after that kind of double breath. So still breathing into the belly on the inhale first, half the inhale, then breathing into the bottom of the ribs, and then either sighing out or breathing out through the nose. So I don't want you to overthink the breath too much, but I do want you to be thinking about your breath. So there's a difference between, you know, chewing up whether or not it feels, am I doing it right? Am I doing what Ellie said? I don't want you to be worried about that, but I do want you just kind of considering your breath a bit differently. And maybe just noticing how it feels different to how you're normally breathing. And what we're trying to do with yin is find the edge of the pose that we're in. So I say this a lot with our posture exercises too, but it's about finding that edge of challenge. So no pain, no gain is one of the silliest phrases to ever exist, because if you're pushing through pain, you're certainly not gaining. You're just going to mess your body up further down the line. But what I would say is no challenge, no gain. So there's a massive difference between causing yourself pain and harm versus challenging yourself a bit. And for some people, I think they're stuck, and I'm probably one of these people that I'm getting better. But for some people, they're stuck in this perpetual state of challenging themselves too much. They are challenging themselves every single moment of the day. They're probably challenging themselves in their sleep. And because they're challenging themselves so much, it doesn't become challenge anymore. It becomes pain, it becomes hurt, it becomes self-sabotage. So for some people, they always have to push too hard for whatever reason that might be. They always have to do better than they did before, or do better than the person next to them, or not let that person down, to the point where they kind of betray themselves, and they might betray their body too and cause themselves injury. So for those people, the challenge is backing out of the challenge, and the challenge is doing less and being a bit kinder to yourself. And for other people, the kind of flip side of the spectrum is perhaps they're so nervous about challenge. Perhaps challenge before has resulted in pain, or it's resulted in some upset or some stress, and they think, oh, I'm not going to do that again. Only bad things happen when I challenge myself. And for those people, the challenge is the opposite. The challenge is to lean a little bit deeper into the pose. Try a little bit harder. And I don't mean that in a mean way of like, you're not trying hard enough, but I mean, just, could you be a little bit more stretched? Could you create a bit more length through your spine? Or could you just change something in a way that you don't think about normally? Could you be thinking a little bit more about your breath? Perhaps you've forgotten about it. So maybe it's helpful to just decide which of those camps you're on. And maybe perhaps you're somewhere in the middle, and perhaps it's situational. But if it is situational, then try and put yourself in a bit of a camp when it comes to movement. Because if you can identify which of those you are, you're going to sort yourself out a lot quicker. Because I find typically with my clients, like I said, I can divide them into two camps. The people that push so hard that they don't listen to pain and can't stop doing things that cause them pain, so they're never getting ahead of their body. And then there are some people where they're so nervous, or pain has been, you know, so prevalent for them that they're too scared to challenge. But without that challenge, their body doesn't strengthen, develop, and grow. So see if you can just kind of kindly put yourselves into one of those camps and see if you can act a little bit the opposite to what you would normally be doing. Okay, so slowly take your bolster out of the way, or your blocks, and do just give yourself a minute here to unwind. You might feel like a bit creaky kind of in your rib cage and stuff like that. Hopefully it's really that your rib cage has realigned itself. You'll have stretched off your hips a bit there. You've hopefully opened up your shoulders, maybe your sinuses, but just give yourself a minute. And of course, firstly, you're always welcome to do any movement that you like, but you might want to do something where you kind of just like take your knees from side to side, or maybe do some pelvic rolls or something like that. But we are actually going to come into a little rotation next. So our next position is called twisted roots, which is a bit like modified IT band stretch for Egoscue fanatics. You can have a pillow underneath your head if you want to. You can have your arms out to the side, palms facing up. You can have your palms facing down. You can have your hands behind your head. I'm going to put my hands behind my head just because that's what I like here. And what we're going to do is, without shifting our pelvis, we're going to cross our right knee over our left knee. And I just want you to very, very gently twist. And I want you to be like floppy and heavy with no muscular engagement here. But I just want you to flop to the right-hand side. And I want you to stop as soon as you notice your left shoulder blade wants to lift up off the floor. So this isn't about touching the floor with your knees. It's about keeping that shoulder grounded, because then you're getting the rotation through your pelvis rather than the whole spine. And we'll stay here for 2 minutes on this side. So keep up with that breathing. So we're breathing into the belly, breathing into the kind of higher parts of breathing into the upper part of the belly, the lower part of the ribs. And whilst you're here and in this twist, I want you to really breathe into that part of your rib cage that you just exposed. So I didn't say it earlier, but maybe you were just breathing kind of up and down. But now I really want you to breathe into the sides of the ribs, because your ribs will really stretch off if you can breathe into them better. Your feet are relaxed, your knees are heavy, the jaw relaxes. Elbows, arms. Very, very passive here. If you need to prop anything under your knees to kind of take any edge off your lower back or anything like that, feel free to do so. You can roll back a little bit higher. But find your self-compassion. Is self-compassion for you pulling back and doing less? Or is self-compassion for you today about pushing yourself slightly harder? And that really is relative. It's not, we're not forcing, we're just asking, can I go 1%, 2% more? Breathing into the sides of the ribs. I feel like I can fall asleep there today. We've got 20 seconds left on this side. Keep breathing. Everything relaxes. Maybe you're getting a stretch through your kind of spine. I'm getting it through the front of my left hip just because of what's happening through my left pelvis. Okay, that's 2 minutes there. Then you bring yourself back to center. You might want to sort of creak yourself back to center and give yourself a moment just to kind of recalibrate here. So in comparison to how your back felt when you started the session, does anything feel different? So like maybe you feel a bit more, I feel definitely a bit more grounded through the bottom of my ribs. I feel like my right lower back never normally kind of grounds on the floor. but it's feeling that a bit. My shoulders feel a bit different. So just notice. And hopefully you'll keep picking up as the session goes on that you'll start feeling more and more relaxed. If you're not, it's probably a sign that something hasn't suited you along the way. So I've got my hands behind my head, whatever arm position suits you. Without shifting your pelvis, you're crossing your right knee over your left knee, and you're just gently tilting towards that left-hand side. So you're like really passive and floppy there. You're not forcing those knees to go anywhere they don't want to. We are keeping our opposite shoulder on the floor. So I've twisted to the left, and I'm making sure that my right shoulder is not twisting off the floor. And we're still going in that breath. So belly, ribs out, belly, ribs out. But see if you can send that breath into that side portion of the rib cage. And maybe if this is the first time that you've done this type of more conscious breath work, maybe it surprises you to kind of realize how much of an activity breathing is, or how much capacity you have to breathe into all sorts of different places all around your torso. Like I said at the beginning, so many of us, and me definitely included, but so many of us are stuck in our necks and in our chests and on our collarbones. And it feels magical to get that breath further down. We've got another minute here. Keep on breathing. You might notice that your body starts relaxing a little bit more, and perhaps you can twist slightly further into it. But remember, which camp are you on? Are you in the camp of the people that already push too hard? And the bigger lesson for you is to learn not to push so hard. Or are you in the camp where perhaps you just need to push a tiny, tiny bit more? I don't like the word push though. Encourage yourself to delve a little deeper. Getting those ribs moving, but not the shoulders, not the neck, not the collarbones so much. We're just trying to channel that breath a bit further down. We've got 10 seconds left here. 3, 2, and 1. Okie dokie. So next up, we're going to grab our bolster again if you've got one. Or once again, if you don't, you can use your yoga block, and we're going to come into supported bridge, which I have to confess is one of my absolute favorite positions in the world. So for supported bridge, I want you to have your lower back in a slightly arched position, and the pelvis flat on the bolster. So I don't want your pelvis hanging off the bolster, so all of the curve is in your lower back, but I also don't want your pelvis like tucking under and falling off the bolster. And the same rules apply for the block. So with the block, if you haven't done this before, I thoroughly recommend doing it on the lowest height possible, but then you can move, so you can put the block on the medium height or the tallest height if it suits you. I'm going to stay here for 5 minutes. So try and have your toes, your ankles, your knees, and your hips in alignment. This is because you're going to have more chance of opening up the front of your hips if your legs are in alignment. If your knees are rolling in or if they're falling out, you're twisting the hip in the socket. So we're not achieving hip extension, which is really what we're going after here. So this is stretching off the fronts of those tight hips that sit down all day. Have another little think about your arms here. So I quite like putting my arms overhead in this exercise, kind of having my elbows quite close to my shoulders. And I really like to tuck my chin under and give myself quite a strong double chin. So for me, having my arms overhead like this just really creates length up the back of my kind of compressed neck, I guess. But once again, anything goes. You can have your palms facing up. You can have them out at a T shape. You can have them on your belly. You can do whatever you want to do. I just want you to do what suits you the most. And close your eyes down. I'm going to set the timer here. And we are going to enjoy the magic of some prolonged hip extension. Keep things nice and calm. Remember, breathing into the belly, breathing into the lower ribs, exhaling out of the nose or the mouth. Let's try and get that mid-body moving and thinking a bit differently about the breath. So yeah, I made myself a pact for today's class that I wasn't going to talk too much about alignment and muscles and things like that, because I wanted to show you a different side to, I guess, me to a certain extent, but a different side to movement and yoga, because however much I bang on about alignment and this isn't right and this is right and we should be doing this and we should be thinking about that when we do our posture exercises, there's not really any hard and fast rules about movement. There really isn't. There is just what feels best for you. But my job as a posture therapist is to get you understanding what feels best for you, but in the biggest variety of ways. So that's why I'm so hot on alignment and trying to get you thinking about things differently, because most people are stuck a certain way and therefore they don't have the body awareness or just an awareness of what the other side of the equation should feel like to kind of ask themselves the right questions, because it's not their version of normal. So I'm constantly feeding all these cues at you guys in the classes, because if I didn't say, for example, to the person with a posterior pelvic tilt, make sure that you're rolling your pelvis forwards, that person would never be teaching themselves that movement pattern. They would just be kind of hanging out in the zone that they're already hanging out in, and is where their injuries are kind of coming from. So the hat that I have on when I teach people posture is very different to the hat that I have on when I do stuff like this, because to a certain extent, you can't really go wrong with this. Again, as with everything, as long as you don't push it and you don't hurt yourself, you can't really go wrong. And I want you just focusing on your breathing and relaxing as much as my wittering will allow you to. But I don't want you thinking, is my leg in the right place or is my pelvis in the right place? I just want you closing your eyes and feeling your body. I just want you having that sense of the heaviness of your pelvis on the bolster, the sensation of the floor underneath your feet. Whereabouts are you grounded on the floor in your rib cage? Is it different from side to side? Do your shoulder blades feel like they're the same on the floor? There's no judgment there. There's no expectation there. There's no annoyance if your shoulders aren't balanced. You're just noticing, because it's interesting to notice. And by noticing, you become more mindful. So we're all trapped in our heads all the time, cycling through thought after thought after thought, like a factory wheel of thoughts, constantly. And unfortunately, the older that we get and the more trapped in our repetitive thought patterns that we become, the harder it is to break out of them. Children can quickly snap out of habits because they haven't had the time to make them entrenched. Adults have a much harder time to change their habits because they've been doing them for so long. And our perception and our view of the world gets narrower and narrower a lot of the time, I think, because we think that the thoughts that are running through our heads are the same thoughts that's running through everyone else's heads. But obviously we've all got completely different lived experiences of the world, so that's not going to be the case. And we have to actively create moments in our life where we take ourselves out of this hamster wheel of thoughts. Because if we don't take ourselves out of the hamster wheel of thoughts, that hamster wheel is just going to run us into our grave one day. I know that that maybe sounds a bit morbid, but if we're trapped in our heads and we're trapped in our thoughts and just churning the same stuff every single day, what life is that? But one of the joys about movement, when we do it in inverted commas properly, when we're just here with ourselves, breathing and listening to our bodies, one of the joys about movement is it's that circuit breaker. It's not a circuit breaker if you're going to the gym, doing a high intensity, leaping up and down class,
thinking about picking up the kids from school or doing the food shop or that deadline you've got at work, or what's the traffic going to be like on my way home, I'm going to have a shower. If you're going to the gym with all of those thoughts racing through your head, you're not focusing on your body, you're not listening to your body. That's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for injury. It's a recipe for raised cortisol and feeling anxious and wrapped up for the rest of the day. When we move, it's our opportunity, amongst many other things, to just take that break away from our brain and just come back into our body where we kind of belong. It's much healthier for us to be in our body, I think, than it is our brain. Oh, and I've gone on a bit too long there. We're here for 6 minutes, but hey ho, hopefully that felt good. So I'll get off my plinth. So with this one, you might want to push into your feet, kind of just lift your hips up slightly and slide your bolster to one side. It'll be a bit easier if you're on a block, because you can kind of like commando roll off a block if needs be. We're going to come in next to supported half frog. So you can have cushions underneath your head if you like that. You can also, if you have two bolsters, arrogant, I have got two bolsters, but I figured you guys wouldn't, so I'm not going to use bolsters for this one. But what we're going to do is have one leg long. I'm going to do my left leg first, just because that's the one that's closest to the camera. I'm actually going to grab a cushion and put it under my head. And then what we are doing is just simply allowing that left knee to flop to the side like that. So my right knee is out long, my left knee is flopped out to the side. But as you do that flop out, I don't want your right pelvis rolling up off the floor. So there's a little bit of an alignment because I can't help myself. But I want you, when you're kind of coming from that start position, as the knee rolls outwards, I don't want your pelvis responding. So you might notice that you get to a certain point, and then actually I'm going to practice what I preach here. You might notice that you get, that's not going to work. There we go. You might notice that you get to a certain point and then your opposite hip wants to roll up off the floor. I want you to prop yourself up wherever you need to be to have your pelvis flat to the floor, so that we are isolating the rotation at the hip. I don't want the pelvis rotating too. And we're going to stay here for, let me just check the time. We'll stay here for 3 minutes on this side before we swap. So this is half frog. And unlike when we do this in our posture classes, we're being completely passive. So I don't want you thinking about your feet doing anything or anything like that. This is just about, no, my little contraption's not working. I'm going to put a cushion on top of it instead. Or, hold on, I'll try my 2 yoga blocks. Oh, that's better. That was not very intelligent of me. I've got my 2 yoga blocks on the more set way around. And just breathe into this again. So you're breathing into that belly, into your nose, breathing into your rib cage, and just exhaling, letting go. So we're opening up our left hip into extension. And I'm not going to talk about posture too much, but I do want you just to notice how it feels on this side, just because it'll be interesting to compare to the other side. Keep going with the breath, relaxing the hands, relaxing the legs, relaxing the feet. Just noticing any tension that kind of tries to crawl its way in, and just see if you can let it go. Keep breathing into this. And actually, maybe whilst you're here, because we breathed into the side of our ribs, we were sort of breathing into the front of our ribs. I wanted to see if you can breathe back onto the floor for me a little bit more this time. So send your intention with this position, backwards, down into the floor. See what muscles you need to wake up in your torso to kind of pull that lower back down. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong cue. You're not pulling your lower back down. You're pushing your lower back down from the inside out. So the inside out, our breathing, our diaphragm is as much a part of our musculoskeletal system as any other part of you. And to all of those people that are habitually clenching their abdominals down to pull their lower back down, what you're actually doing is kind of preventing your diaphragm and intercostal muscles from getting involved in that. And all of this stuff is it's just coming out for me. The last 6 months have been such a whirlwind in different ways, but it's just highlighted to me so much how important breathing is. And that's 3 minutes on that side. So you might want to kind of take your left hand underneath your left thigh to pull the leg up, but we're going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. However, in between, let's just bend our knees and put our feet flat to the floor and just do that check-in again. So I said we weren't doing rebounds, and we're not doing rebounds in a typical sense, because normally you'd hold a rebound for like 2 minutes or so. But just see here quickly, like, does your rib cage feel different? Does your back feel different? Does your lower back feel different? The pelvis? Just notice. Don't judge it. Just notice and let it go. Okay, so blocks on the other side. And it may be that you feel that you don't need to be blocked up quite so high on this side. But what I would say is, for the purpose of this exercise, keep the blocks the same height. Work to your tighter side rather than just opening your more open side up more, okay? So I'm laying out my left leg long. I'm getting that sense of my pelvis being square up to the ceiling, and you can kind of hold the front of your pelvis as you do this. You're just gently flopping that right knee to the side without letting the left pelvis lift up off the floor, and prop yourself up. And it may be that you discover that you need more proppage on this side, and that's fine, you'll know for next time. But just notice how this side feels. Get back into your breath again, and off we go for 3 minutes. So breathing into the belly, breathing into the back of the ribs, and see if you can push your rib cage down into the floor as you open up the right hip. The feet are relaxed, the legs are relaxed, everything is relaxed. You might feel a bit crampy in your right hip as it opens up, that's absolutely fine, but it's only your breathing that's actively doing anything here. Trying to get as much of that rib cage moving, but from the bottom up rather than it being from the top kind of down, or top just being stuck there. Get the bottoms of your ribs moving. And if you're anything like me, you'll notice how that starts to de-thaw the mid and upper portion of the rib cage. So with this increased movement in my bottom ribs, I really notice my shoulders pull back behind me, my collarbone open. It's just magic. The kind of warmth comes back to my hands. I feel tingly. That's not to say that you guys will too, but maybe you do notice a difference. I think this kind of stuff it's especially powerful for people that breathe terribly. And I am one of those people. My eyes have been opened. I'm on a quest to change it. But it takes time, because it's something, like I said earlier, these patterns get entrenched in us, and they become they become more difficult to break the longer that we have them for. 1 minute left here. Release any tension that may have cropped up in the jaw, in the neck, in the hands. One of the things that helped me the most when I started working last year with Sophie, who's a Posh Squad member and breathwork teacher who taught us last year, is she made me ask myself, where do I hold my tension when I'm breathing? Like when you breathe, are you moving your shoulders up and down? Do you move your like head forwards and backwards? Do you gasp in your throat? Do you just not breathe? And I realized like I barely breathed at all, but I clenched my right side. With every breath that I take, I clench my right belly. I scrunch down in the right side of my rib cage, which, as I'm sure everyone watching this will know, I have tension in the right side of my rib cage. And hold on, I'm going to carry on my story, but we've done over 3 minutes there. I don't want to make us unbalanced. So the next exercise is we're coming into full supported frog. So you've just done half frog on both sides. I flipped my blocks over. Hopefully now you might notice that your knees go a little bit further, but we've got the blocks now under both of our knees. Our feet are together, but they're not pushing in that same way that we would do typically. And just get yourself settled in again, get back to that breathing. So, and then we'll stay here for, let's check my time. 5 minutes here, I reckon. Yeah, 5 minutes here. So I was talking about my breathing. Oh, damn it, I've lost my train of thought. It was, let me get back into it again. Oh, that was it, gripping my belly. And you guys all know that I have the tension in the right side of my belly. And what I have been able to do with that information now that I'm aware of it, because I wasn't even aware of it, is I notice that I'm doing it. So if I get an email that comes in that annoys me or whatever it might be, the first thing that happens is I clench myself to the right-hand side. I like pull myself down with my belly. And it's just interesting, like something happens in the traffic in front of me, and that's where my stress goes. It's all pinching down in that right side of my waist. It's just, for whatever reason, that's where my body has learned to store my worry, store my stress, store my trauma. And your part of the body is not going to be the same as mine, but perhaps with a little bit of awareness of it, you might start to identify where that is. And I have to be upfront that dealing with this stuff and asking that part of your body to release will bring up all sorts of things for you. It's been a very tumultuous time for me the last few months, as all of this stuff that has just been hidden in my body for a really long time has been coming up. And I'm not a qualified therapist. I can't help you with what comes up in that way, but I would be interested if you would explore the edge of it slightly, because it's been so powerful for me. And it's just opened my eyes to what I have been doing for probably like 25 years. This is like a pattern that I've developed that I just wasn't aware of. So maybe this has made you realize that you constantly grip your belly. Maybe you're always gripping your belly, or maybe you're always gripping your teeth. And ask yourself, can I let go? Can I give myself permission to let go of this tension that I am choosing to hold? Because tension is your brain protecting you. Maybe it's protecting you from worry, or thinks it's protecting you from worry by hiding it. But tension is created by your brain to stop your body from injuring itself by being too lax. For a body that's wonky and dysfunctional, it needs to have tension in certain parts in order for you to be held upright and move you forwards. But in certain situations, that's not serving you. It might serve you whilst you're walking around, but is that serving you whilst you're laying here right now relaxing? So just let go. Let go. Does anything bad happen when you let go? Hopefully not. Hopefully it feels nice to do that. We're showing ourselves compassion. We're not chewing ourselves up with tension and stress all the time. And believe you me, I'm saying that from the perspective of somebody who totally gets it. breathing here, just letting our hips open. And as the hips open, you might notice that you get more space in your lower back and in your rib cage, across the shoulders, the arms. Try and keep the back of your neck long here though, whether that be on a cushion or just on the floor, but I don't want you tilting your head backwards. See if you can keep up that breathing. So maybe with all of my talking, you've lost that thought about the breath, and that's all right. You just bring yourself back round to it. So I meditate every day with my Calm app, and every time I do it, until recently, I got so angry at myself because I'm like, it's 10 minutes. Jeff is the man that I listen to. Jeff's telling me this little story to help me distract myself from my thoughts. And I'm still getting lost in my thoughts. And I'm 5 minutes into the meditation and I'm like, oh God, I haven't got a clue what's going on. I've got to bring myself back round. But that's what meditation is. There is no, it's just about showing up, noticing, trying not to be mean to yourself along the way when you deem that you've failed, like I do with the meditation. But the more that you show up and the more that you do it and the more that you fail, the more that you'll actually then start having these longer periods of time where you don't get distracted by the thoughts and that you can stay with the body. Because by centering ourselves back down into our body like this is where we can create inner peace for ourselves. We can have so much stress going on in the external world. We can have so much going on in our external lives. But inner peace is where you can always come. It's your oasis. People can't take this away from you. No one can take away your inner peace. Only you can take away your inner peace by allowing the thoughts to run away with you. And I want more of you to really try and use your posture exercises as these moments of inner peace. And even if you're being mean to yourself and thinking that your hip flexor should be waking up, and Ellie's telling me my hip flexor is waking up, why isn't it waking up? You're there, you're trying, your body is doing stuff for you, and just be thankful that you're able to show up for yourself in that way, because so many people can't. So you're amazing for being here, and for continuing to show up. You're incredible. We're all incredible. But I just don't think we see that about ourselves very often. Okay, time in that one. I also ran over, I keep going on my plinth. Too much opportunity for talking. So before we come into Shavasana, we are going to try a somewhat challenging pose. And the reason I'm throwing this in is because I want you to try it, of course, but I want you to have the self-compassion for yourself that if it feels too much, that you will come out of it as soon as you need to. So I'll just quickly demonstrate this. If you've got your bolster, that's great, but this could also be a bunch of pillows, and we can also put cushions on top. We're going to come to a kneeling position with our feet either sides of the bolster like this, and I want you to see if you can lay backwards with your knees on the floor. So this is hard. When I do that, my back is really arched, my rib cage is really flaring. So what I'm going to do is come back and put some cushions underneath. So I'm propping myself up. So I'm going after the same range of movement, but I'm doing it in a more supported way. So it feels like it's happening more through the front of my hips. I'll just let Nick grab his stuff. So this is saddle pose. And saddle pose is like supported bridge, which we did earlier with our bum on the bolster. If saddle feels too much for you, you can absolutely get yourself back into that supported bridge pose that we did earlier, or you can do anything else. But saddle is an extremely strong front body opener. So we're asking the hips to extend, we're asking the feet to plant to flex. I'm doing alignment stuff, but I've started now, so I might as well finish. Feet to plant to flexing, your body's in a back bend, you're in spinal extension, and what you do with your arms here is up to you, but be prepared that this is quite an intense pose if you're not feeling that already. We'll set the timer, we'll stay here for about 3 minutes, I think, not too long, and I say that and maybe you're like, it's definitely too long, before we come into our Shavasana. So yes, this is, in my opinion, a wonderful yoga pose. I love this. It's got benefits. But the reason I put this here is a psychological test to you. So can you come out of this if you need to? Can you give yourself that self-compassion? Or can you maybe try this where ordinarily you'd think, I can't do that? Rather than telling yourself you can't do it, maybe think, maybe today's the day. Maybe today is the day that I can do it, but maybe you need a lot more proppage than you see that I have. So you could be doing a similar version of this, but you could basically be kind of sat upright because you're so propped up on cushions and things, and that's fine. And your arms overhead are going to make it more intense, so you can kind of pull out on that. But just put yourself in that camp again. Do I need to push less? Do I need to push a little more? And apply that to this exercise, but apply it to every single posture exercise or general exercise or anything in life, really. Apply it to everything, because that principle is you mindfully tuning into your intuition. By asking yourself that question, it's that circuit breaker that stops you falling into your old movement patterns. But it's also like a flow chart. It's like a logical question you can ask yourself to start having a conversation with your intuition. You asking yourself that question is your ego, your external mind. Ego, by the way, doesn't mean necessarily like you're arrogant. It means the side of you that is the one that you show to the external world. And I think it's your id is the other side of the equation, but I could be wrong. But you're chatting between the two halves of your brain, basically. Shall I push harder or shall I push less? And your body will tell you what you need to do. Your body knows everything if only you choose to listen to it. We've got 20 seconds left here. Of course, you're welcome to come out of it at any time. And if you're really enjoying this, then you can feel free to stay in this if you'd like for your Shavasana. But I do think it would probably be beneficial just to have some time really rebounding, because we haven't done that throughout the class. But it's your rules. You can do what you want. Okay, time here is up. Gently do whatever you need to do to get out. So you might be able to kind of just push yourself straight up, but you might have to kind of roll to the side slightly inelegantly, which is absolutely fine. And then we are going to finish in our Shavasana, our corpse pose. So take your time, but you can grab pillow to put underneath your head. I'd like your legs to be out long. For some people, if your hips struggle to extend, alignment again, sorry. If your hips struggle to extend, you might really feel this in your lower back. So what you can do is pop a bolster underneath your knee, like this, or cushions. But what that does is it asks for less extension of the hip, and it means your lower back can relax. But equally, ask yourself that same question I just said again, because we've done a whole bunch of hip extension in today's classes, and actually maybe today is the day that you can have your legs long without the support. Maybe that is the day, but maybe it's not, and that's fine. Put the bolster back. But this is the inquiring attitude that I want you to have all the time. What was the case yesterday is not the case today, and it won't be the case tomorrow, because you guys are showing up and doing your posture exercises, and you're not just flopping into your couch and blaming old age and blaming genetics and blaming your lot. Because you're not doing that, your body is going to be changing every day. And so always make sure that you're keeping on top of those changes and not just assuming that you can't do something because you couldn't do it yesterday. Maybe today is the day. But just because you could do something yesterday doesn't mean that today is the day that you can. You have to be okay with it either way. Okay, I'm going to shut up. We're going to spend the last 5 minutes here just breathing. however you want to breathe. So you can let go of what I've been trying to encourage you to do through the class. But maybe you feel like you are a bit more open anyway, so perhaps you're breathing a bit differently. And just take this time to marinate. Keep breathing. Just notice if you're clenching up your hands or your toes or your belly or your jaw. Have any of those old habits snuck in? And can you tell them to go? You tell them to go away. You don't need them. They're not serving you right now. We'll stay here for another 2 minutes. Got about 1 minute left. Keep relaxing. Final few seconds here. If we bring our knees to a bent position again, and just let's do one final check-in with how our back body feels like it's engaging with the floor. I've had done quite a strong yoga class this morning, and I've done a decent amount of walking, been quite active today, but that's really helped with my rib cage balance. So I hope it has with you guys as well. And then just taking your time, however you want to get there. We're going to bring ourselves to a seated position. So if you want to roll to your side, that's fine. But just bring yourselves up, and we're not going to do any prayer motions or anything like that, because I know that some people, I think, get scared. Well, not scared, but they think yoga is a religion, or they think that yoga is somehow anti their God. And it's really, really not. Yoga is a practice. It's a practice for becoming the best person that you can be. And, you know, that shines out to the greater world around you, because the better person you are to yourself, the more you understand the principles of yoga, the better person you can be for everybody else as well. So it's not a religion, but I understand that the prayer motion can sometimes like spook people. So just sit here for a moment and just absorb what you've done. Take a deep breath in. And just say thank you to yourself. Thank you to yourself for taking this time to be with your body, to hopefully rest your mind a little bit, and for showing up. Because if you can do something like this every single day, it doesn't have to be an hour, it might be 10 minutes, it might be 15 minutes. Imagine how different your life will be if you can show up for yourself and give yourself that self-compassion every single day a little bit. Before you know it, you're going to have rewired all of those negative thoughts that spin in your head all the time. So I really hope you've enjoyed the class. My first yin. There was lots of talking as predicted, but I think I did quite well with not talking about muscles and stuff too much. So I will come to the camera. I'll just stop the recording as well.